Well, welcome to the Institute of Managers and Leaders and today's webinar where we're exploring the Foundations of Intentional Leadership program and certainly the concept of intentional leadership. In particular, the 5 ways someone can become an intentional leader, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we transgress through the webinar. I'm delighted to say that we're running this webinar off the back of 3 very successful cohorts in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, fully booked cohorts for the Foundations of Intentional Leadership, and it really resonated certainly with those cohorts. And once again, I will talk a little bit about that as we get into the webinar. My name's Sam Bell and I'm the General Manager of Corporate Services here at the Institute, and I look after the development program and certainly all our development programs and our Foundations program, which is what we're talking about today. So let's get into it. So are you an accidental manager or an intentional leader? And that's been a question we've been posing for some time, and really the notion around becoming this intentional leader, because what we find certainly is people enter management roles and leadership roles ill-equipped for the challenges that face them in those roles, and are certainly technically very good, but from a management and leadership perspective need some guidance and support through that journey. So just quickly, who's the Institute of Managers and Leaders? We strongly believe that we can create better societies, better organisations and better people through delivery of management and leadership capability development and training. The Institute has been around for 76 years. We really recognise the impact good managers and leaders have on the workplace and their people. We also realise the impact bad or poor managers and leaders have on the impact they have on their workplace and their people. So it's certainly been a real driver for us to create this intentional leadership program and really run with the notion of intentional leadership in Australia's workplaces. As I said, IML, as we refer to it, is 76 years old and it's focused around the professional development of managers and leaders, both individuals and organisations. We're Australia's largest professional body for management and leadership. What we'll cover today in our intentional leadership webinar is to firstly discuss a little bit about coaching and why coaching is so essential to intentional leadership, and why it's certainly an integral part of the Foundations program. We'll discuss behavioural change and the fact that over 12 weeks, how can you change someone's behaviour to become that intentional leader, and some of the skills around those behavioural changes. Identifying the best ways to translate some of the concepts that we'll talk about into practical outcomes for you in the workplace. And also what underpins all of this is obviously our Foundations program. So looking at how the Foundations program does deliver on intentional leadership. And I'm delighted today to welcome our leadership specialist and our facilitator for the Sydney cohort, Kerry Irwin. Now Kerry's going to make an eloquent arrival into the webinar. So welcome, Kerry.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody in webinar land.
Thank you for joining us, Kerry, today. And I'll give you, I won't embarrass you too much, but I'll provide a brief bio of Kerry. And as I said at the outset, Kerry is a leadership specialist for a number of organisations, but she does facilitate our intentional leadership program and our Foundations program. And just a little bit about Kerry. So she's a highly credentialed HR professional and experienced HR executive generalist. Kerry brings a depth of corporate experience to the program. She has been the Vice President and Director of Human Resources at a number of multinational organisations such as Abbott Pharmaceuticals, Thales Australia, United Group, and also currently with Boral.
I'm doing a lot of in-house work with Boral.
With Boral, yeah. So fantastic, Kerry. Thank you so much. You've just come out of the as I mentioned earlier to the webinar, you've come out of the Sydney cohort and facilitating them. What was one of the lasting impressions you had of the Foundations of Intentional Leadership program here with the Sydney cohort?
I think, Sam, what was the most stickable thought in my mind coming out of that program was how quickly that cohort became very cohesive. They were from totally different businesses, totally different levels, but all had arrived in their roles recently as managers and were accidental managers. So it was, but the rapid nature of which they engaged with each other was very heartwarming.
Yeah, terrific, Kerry, and certainly from a personal level, I visited them a couple of times, and certainly in that last session, they really enjoyed each other's company by the sixth module. So it was terrific to see. So we'll get right into that, but firstly, let's cover the IML competency framework, because really this is what underpins everything IML does as an organisation. These are the 34 competencies that our business is centred on. So everything we do from a CPD, professional development level, to our programs, to our events, are all centred around these 34 competencies, and the notion that you need to manage yourself first to be able to manage and lead others, and then finally, once you've been able to manage and lead others, you can manage and lead your business. So we'll cover a little bit of some of these modules and some of these competencies within the modules that we'll talk about, but I did want to share this with you because these competencies underpin exactly how this program's come about, and certainly all the activities IML does as professional members and corporate members engage with our institute. So let's start them with coaching, because I did talk at the outset of the webinar that we do as an institute certainly recognise the value of coaching and also mentoring, but we will touch on mentoring a bit later. But certainly coaching is an essential part. And Kerry, it comes back to exactly what you said earlier, accidental manager. So our definition of accidental manager, some people have different definitions. Our definition is a person's talent and technical skill probably made them quite successful in their previous non-managerial role, but the talent that makes someone a great salesperson, accountant or engineer is not the same talent that makes him or her a great manager. And that certainly resonates, I think, with a lot of people. And from the Chartered Management Institute in the UK, up to 7 out of 10 managers identify themselves as accidental managers. And as you suggested, coming into the Foundations program, most of them felt that way.
They did.
So coming back to this notion of coaching and how we use, so someone comes in as an accidental manager, what's the value of having a coach, you know, whether it's up front or whether it's just as they begin the program?
I think the value of it is the fact that you've got the face-to-face theory in the room and some practical application in the room, but in coaching, when it's one-on-one, you have that safe space to actually work through, well, how did they become a manager at this point, and what was the history to do so, and what sort of things are there, the things that keep them awake at night, and where they feel their gaps are. And they can quite openly share that in a very confidential manner in a coaching session, a one-on-one coaching session.
So you said at the outset of the program that we do 3 diagnostic tools. I should cover that at the beginning of the program before it starts. That's DISC. That's an Australian Emotional Intelligence tool called Genos, and it's also our IP, which is the IML 360, which is totally built around those competencies I showed you a little bit earlier. So each participant does that. Now they do a group debrief, but then you as a coach can use the results from each of those diagnostic tools to help them further in their coaching. Is that
that's how it works? So we do in module 1, we debrief in a group sense. So basically nobody reveals their actual individual report, but as a group I unpack that, explain to them that they will go through what's called SARA sometimes, shock, anger, rejection, acceptance model, and then basically say that in the one-on-one coaching, which we follows in the next week and a half or so, that then we will go through it on an individual basis.
Okay, yeah, and the results from that seem to be, you know, certainly you really get that heartfelt one-to-one, and they start to understand where their strengths and weaknesses lie.
Yes, I think the actually doing the assessments going in is invaluable, because it actually sets them up to say, they can't sit there and say, this isn't me, you know, that I am a good leader, or I know that. This is actually, because it's 360, it's actually factual in front of them of the observations of people that they work with.
Okay, terrific, Kerry. So let's start with module 1, because you just mentioned that. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We might just talk about a little bit about the intentional leader, because this is really making that transition from the accidental manager to the intentional leader. So our definition of the intentional leader is that a manager who acknowledges and understands their role as a leader in an organisation. They recognise and appreciate the character and competencies of both themselves and their team, and they lead with intent, purpose, and see a vision of the bigger picture. And I think as we go through these modules and have a look at the ways in which someone can become an intentional leader, you'll certainly get a feel of how that definition's come about, because it's certainly been taken straight from the module. So let's make this transition from accidental manager to intentional leader, and we'll start with our first module that we cover, which is around self-reflection. Now, in the subject line of this webinar, it was 5 ways to become an intentional leader, and those 5 ways are going to be some practical resources that Kerry is going to talk about. Now, I hope Kerry's got 5, but they will come out throughout each of the modules, where she'll have a practical article or a video or something to go and have a look at, and we will certainly provide you with direct links to those materials after the webinar. So let's start with module 1 around self-reflection. So it really looks at 4 key things. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about changing behaviour, Kerry, and we believe that it takes, someone going on a 1 or a 2-day course is you could only take in so much, and over 2 days you're probably not going to change someone's behaviour. And so it's part of the reason why we've spoken to best practice, really L&D experts that have told us that to change someone's behaviour you really need a minimum of 12 weeks, which is why at the outset this program is 6 modules across 12 weeks, so it changes that behaviour. And through this module we look at how do you build trust and credibility amongst your peers. How do you reflect on the importance of self and that notion of reflection, which I'm sure you've got some comments about, and what are your core values as a leader, and how do you articulate those? Can you share a little bit about the importance of this self-reflection module?
Well, a lot of times people that are accidental managers or people that have stumbled on being in a management position don't take time to reflect on how they got there or what they need to do going forward. So the importance of self-reflection is actually raised in each module, and we talk about the cohort going back into their workplace and how that will be difficult to maintain, but they should at least schedule an hour and talk to their managers about the fact they're going to do that, and work on what they've got homework between each module, and work on that homework and also diarise the aha moments in the program. So from the point of view of that self-reflection, it's embedding a practice. So many times managers are on the dance floor instead of being on the balcony, and that's just time pressure. So yeah, that's the importance of self-reflection for those folks that going forward as managers.
So self-reflection critical. What is a key resource that really resonated, I guess, with the Sydney cohort in particular, but a resource that is part of the program that you believe delivers on this?
It was a very short video from Colin Powell about what did he feel was the most important behaviour or value of the leader to make them effective, and it was trust. And it's a very powerful message, and we can share that with the people on the webinar. Yeah.
As I said, we will send you a link afterwards to get in touch with us, and we can send you those resources directly. But great to hear that video was so powerful.
It was. It resonated well with people.
So the second module and the second skill of intentional leadership, really looking at, once again, self. And we touched on this in the competency framework, and you can see the managed self competencies on the slides there. And it's really looking at those competencies which set up the program. What's the importance of managed self, particularly in relation to time management, decision making and problem solving, and professional networking?
I think a couple of things that really resonated with the cohort was going through the Covey time management quadrants.
Stephen Covey.
Yeah. Stephen Covey. Yeah. From the point of view of urgent, non-urgent, delegate, dump, etc., and just having, in fact, some of the cohort actually then used it every day as a method to set out their day as to what they were going to work on that day. What was important and what wasn't important. So that was great.
And how did they feel when they translated that back into the work? Was it,
they said it actually changed their time, the way they delivered, which I thought was fantastic. And one person said it changed their life. So that was great from a point of feedback. The other was the decision making and problem solving skills. So we used different models for that. So Fishbone, the 5 Whys, a couple of other different models that we used in order to look at problems, and that gave people structure that maybe they hadn't seen before, and maybe they had but they've forgotten it. So remembering in the room, you've got people that can be degree qualified to people that have actually never studied before. So you've got that very wide range, and it just works. It just worked very effectively.
And the one thing they've got in common is that they're managing people and processes in an organisation, and having those practical skills or practical application to learn those models must be really powerful.
And I think that's the key, Sam. I think you've hit on the key. Having that was their commonality, is they were managing people and the challenges around that.
Yeah. Terrific. Okay, let's go to module 3, communication. So communication, I hear is, absolutely critical to all managers. And once again, this feeds into the managed self-competencies, as you can see on the screen there. But 3 in particular I know you felt worked and we wanted to talk about: physicality and body language, communication skills, obviously, and presentation skills.
Well, one of the things that we used around physicality and body language is actually doing activities to enhance your relaxation, enhance your stance in front of people in presentation, and like faking it till you make it was some of the things that came out of the cohort, which is true. I mean, we referred them to Amy Cuddy, who is a American psychologist, and she's got a good TED Talk, which we'll also send the link for, and around body language and how that actually improves your professional stance, your confidence going into a room in a presentation style or even one-on-one.
Yeah, terrific.
And the communication skills and presentation skills we practiced in the room quite a bit. There's quite a great time frame for that, for people to practice with each other in a safe space around presentation skills and communication skills.
I know a little bit of the feedback, and certainly, managers obviously have the need to present at meetings or present in front of staff or groups. And often you don't have a chance to sort of practice or refine those skills. I guess it gave them that opportunity, but it certainly, I think, put a few of them out of their comfort zones.
Yeah, it certainly did. And the thing was that the cohort in the room was so supportive, to help those people get through that, the nerves of that, and it was a safe space to practice.
So I should also note that we talk about cohorts. These programs are run in very small cohorts, so between a maximum of 16 people and a minimum of about 12 people is what we run. So they're small cohorts, so everyone has an opportunity to participate. I also wanted to touch on, with those presentation skills, you bring back the DISC results as well, and you try to, as part of from the debrief and the coaching session that you've done, is try and use those results from the diagnostic, in particular DISC, to give them a bit more knowledge about how, where their weaknesses are around presenting and how they can do it better.
Yes, and also in communication skills. So they practice, they have 1 or 2 combinations of styles, and so we practice with each other communicating into the person in their style. So understanding that not everyone is the same when you're communicating to different people in the organisation.
Let's move to module 4, Kerry. Manage others. Okay, so we've got, this has really come out of, as I said, the competencies of manage and lead others. And what we have here is we're really focusing on people management, high-performing teams, and effective delegation skills. Kerry, would you like to share us a little bit about how we use these competencies in light of managing others and leading others? And for a lot of these people, it's the first time they've actually done that, and they're put into a position of leading and managing others. Share a little bit about how people management, high-performing teams, and effective delegation skills are touched on at this stage in the program.
I think of the 3, from the point of view of effective delegation skills, I think you've identified, Sam, that a lot of the people in the room were not delegating effectively or as well as they would like to, because it was too easy to do it themselves, rather than taking the time, stepping back and mapping it out for someone else to do it and supporting someone else. So we went through a model of when it's appropriate to delegate, who it's appropriate to delegate. We do the skill and will model to help them think through that from the process.
So that's the skill and will model.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, you step through and decide, are you going to be supportive or directive depending on the capability of the person in regards to the delegation. I think from the people management, one of the things that is most difficult for everyone is having a difficult conversation.
Yes.
And I think we all still struggle with that, no matter in our lives how experienced we are. And so stepping through that and giving a process around having difficult conversations and preparation is key for that. And I think that was one of the things that resonated really strongly with the group.
And I don't think you have to be a junior manager or a middle manager to have that issue in terms of, how do you approach this situation? How do you approach someone? And we'll get into a little bit about performance management shortly, but certainly, it impacts not just junior managers, but people at the top as well. People are frightened about having difficult conversations.
I can say, without mentioning names, I've had CEOs that, they find it very difficult from the point of view. So people predominantly want to be nice to each other. They don't necessarily want to have those sort of conversations, and it's just basically you're not actually doing anybody any favours by not having those conversations. It's actually a gift to sit down and sort of help support someone in a better direction in their performance.
Yeah, one of the key areas, as you can see from the competencies of manage and lead others there on the screen, is that manage conflict as well, and that's probably part of a lot of this discussion is you're inherently probably going to have some conflict in an organisation with a lot of different personalities, and it's keeping that in check, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting because a lot of this is where the power of the participants in the room, a lot of them had such great experiences to share, and they were very open in sharing, which was really good to see, to help each other deal with these issues. They were helping each other deal with these issues around conflict. So we put a model up and they talk about how they would use it, and in fact use case studies of their own as they went through it.
Yeah, and I believe in the Sydney one you ran a case study over all the 12 weeks.
All the way through. So we basically had somebody that had a difficult person that they'd just brought on board into their business, and it was a bit of a nightmare employee, and the whole cohort helped coach that person, that manager, through that process in order for them. And so every 2 weeks it'd be like the next installment of what was happening in that case study.
And the sad thing is, I think that employee didn't make it.
He didn't make it, unfortunately. No. It was quite a dramatic end, but basically I found that so powerful that I wasn't saying anything. The cohort was leaning in and trying to help that person.
Yeah, and manage others is where we see, after obviously you manage self, those competencies are so critical when you promote someone into a manager role, either of people or processes in the business. So let's move on to what we just touched on briefly, was performance management, which is centered around module 5, and performance management critical to an intentional leader and certainly to this program. We did say a little bit about how do you have difficult conversations and the challenges around that. But secondary to that is dealing with a difficult situation in the workplace, and how you react as a manager and a leader to a difficult situation. And lastly, within this area is managing staff performance. So the feedback that's provided. One of the interesting things we run a national salary survey here at the Institute that's been going for 50 plus years. And alongside that, we run a staff retention report. And one of the interesting things is from that staff retention reports is annual appraisals now are not used by the majority of companies. So annual appraisals where, you come in on the July after the end of the financial year and, you get your yearly appraisal. The sad thing is the world moves so fast. Managers can't remember what happened last week, let alone what happened 12 months ago and the performance of that person. So how does sort of managing staff performance deal with, not just the annual appraisal, but constant feedback throughout the year as a leader?
I think we talked about everyone had different processes within the room, and that was another great benefit from having different people having different performance management systems in the room. So we talked about varying performance management systems, including those that don't have annual appraisals any longer, but basically talked about the importance of setting goals and how critical that is at the beginning of any period. So whether you review them monthly, weekly, 6 monthly, those setting of goals and setting of targets, we spent quite a deal of time talking about that.
So is that for the for the individuals, or is that for your group? Or
it's actually cascaded. So you start from the strategy of the organisation, you cascade it to the business unit, to the actual team, and then to the individual.
Yeah.
So it's what we were talking on, where we landed the most was talking about, because it was about performance management around the individual's goals and how to measure those effectively.
Okay. And what do you think is an ideal time period? Is it dependent on should it be a set, sort of quarterly or half yearly or annual, or should it be as on demand as per an individual might require that support?
Okay, well, so from the point of view of the formal process, I would say from a formal situation, you should give your employee at least an hour a month.
Yeah.
Just an hour, close the door, focus on the individual, and give them that time. And then informally or more casually, you would have like a team meeting once a week, and also support in between that. Because there's nothing worse, as you have identified, that annual appraisal, and that person walks in and it's a total shock about their performance. So giving that feedback is very important in periods during the year.
That's terrific advice, Kerry, and something that obviously is delved out in the program. And so that leads us to the final module that we wanted to talk about, which was manage the business. And as we alluded to earlier from the competency framework, manage and lead the business. This is where the most competencies exist, as you can imagine. But for a lot of junior managers, they probably don't get sight of this a lot of the time, but they play an enormous role in it. Not just junior, but middle managers. But a lot of people see this level as sort of an MBA type level, strategy and vision. But if it's not believed and it's not cascaded through the business by individual managers, it's very hard to get that, to bring people with you and bring the staff with you. What was the feeling around getting people to see that bigger picture of their organisation? In the same way that I see, at the beginning, I see our businesses creating better societies, and people go, well, that's a bit of a lofty ambition, but I strongly believe that if I can get my team to believe that, well, better managers and leaders in society will make a better society, we'll have better, stronger institutions, better organisations, more profitable, more well-run organisations. That's the vision and the sort of from the strategy down that I try to cascade across at my team. How does it fit within the program, and how do you see it as a leadership expert?
Well, I think from the point of view of it's very important that it all ties in together, because the strategy isn't live unless it's embedded in terms of goals throughout the organisation, and then not just put on the shelf, actually referred to. So I actually asked the cohort to go and find what their strategy was. I asked them at the beginning to find out what the values of the organisation are, because we talk about putting together a team charter that's married into the strategy. So the team come up with a team charter for their group. They go back to the organisations to do that, and how it marries up into the strategy.
So sorry, they go back to their teams to do that charter in their workplace.
Yes. Okay. So a team charter is, the intent of a team charter is around their roles and responsibilities, how they're going to role model, the behaviours, etc. And they agree as a group, and it sits as a behavioural exercise versus the goal setting that you do as on an individual basis. So, and having that marry into the strategy, and we talked about strategy, how strategy is set. We talked about some financial awareness in terms of business financial planning, and we talked a little bit about that because it's just, and some people are very much across it in the cohort, but others needed, just to be exposed to that, to understand that how it all marries together. But it's interesting too about strategy as well. When you talk about better leaders for a better society, it basically, more and more people want to have a purpose. They want to have something, a higher purpose for their organisation that they believe in. So if you're not communicating and understanding the strategy within the business, then you're not engaging the workforce as well as you can.
Yeah.
Because some people, that's what they come to work for. They want to come to work to support you in your business to deliver on your vision. Yeah.
And probably stepping outside of the program a little bit here, but a great video that I watched, a YouTube video clip from Simon Sinek touches on that exactly, the why.
The why, yes.
The why of the business.
Yes.
And
this is actually, we use this in the program.
Oh, you do? Okay,
yes.
there you go.
Yes,
I should know that, shouldn't I? But,
okay, it's homework. It's all right.
Yeah, it's homework. But it's what's your why, you know, and that's the why. That's what sells, you know. And I know Simon Sinek uses the Apple example. You know, they could sell computers, or they could, you know, design something great and innovative in, you know, and that's the why. You know, people go to work to create, you know, something innovative and new, and they just so happen to make computers.
Yes, exactly.
And iPhones and things like that. So, now the outcome of this module, which is the last one in the program, so this is at week 12, is that they build a 3-month plan of action for themselves.
Yes, they do.
And how important is that for an intentional leader to have this plan built off the back of a learning experience, that they've sort of taken themselves to that next level, and then they've got something to work against over that next 3 months.
It's actually critical, because what happens is, and we've all seen it, you go to a course, and the beauty of this course is being 3 months, but that embedded behaviour is more effective from the point of view of practice. And fantastic, the cohort had fantastic support from their managers back in the business, which was really helpful, having that management support. And the
well, that's critical to the program, isn't it? Having we ask for line manager support at every level, and we communicate with the line manager, don't we?
And it was very noticeable in there that they talked about that from the point of view of the support from their managers, and the managers are saying, oh, we want to go on this course, which was lovely reflection from them. But basically, from the point of view of embedding that 3-month plan, that's something that is actually critical for that thing to stick going forward, to make sure that, and I asked them to promise me that they would also continue to do their hour reflection a week.
Yeah.
To continue on the intentional manager versus the accidental manager.
Yeah.
So that was really important.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they're still doing the homework. And I know that we do continue, as everyone who comes on this program becomes a professional member of the Institute. And I know that certainly your cohort, Melbourne cohort, Brisbane cohort, are coming to the masterclass that we're having, and they'll sit as a table, as a group, which I think is a nice way to continue the cohort, bring them together and talk about, you know, how they've executed on their plan, and, you know, how they're going in their roles. Because as you said, it's if you're learning from others and peers, you know, they can learn from you, and you can certainly set out the modules and the theory, but really that practical element comes from the experiences of the cohort.
It does. And the other thing that I think is important, I think you're going to talk about it in a moment, but the fact that it goes on with mentoring out of the program, and I think that is another key content of the program, because I've coached for twice through the modules, and obviously face to face. I'm still coaching as well, but at the end of the program, you want to see that they still have some support.
Yeah. So that leads us to the next slide. Thanks for the segue.
Oh, that's all right.
Kerry.
I think it's really important.
It is, and part of the 3-month action plan is married up with a 4-month mentor. Now we have an in-house mentoring program, as you can see on the screen there, called Member Exchange. What we do recommend, I know, for program participants, is that they look internally first, and if they can't find someone or not as comfortable, we'll enter them into the IML program. And the IML mentoring program has been around for many, many years. It's highly successful, and because we've obviously got a very large network of members with a variety of different management and leadership experience that they can be paired with. And mentoring is a feature of professional membership. So as a professional member, you're able to access both as a mentor and a mentee. And so it forms a critical part of our foundations program, and it really underpins that 3-month plan. And you've talked a little bit about how it does embed that learning. And what I'd like to see is hopefully they develop this lifelong mentor relationship, which is what we see with a lot of our members who become mentors and mentees, and they do it for the 4 months, but then they stay in touch. And it just allows them a sounding board to talk about. And as someone, I guess, moving through into their career and perhaps changing roles, it's someone to talk to about, you know, how they can do it. So you certainly see it's of value for that action plan as well, to support that action plan.
Absolutely.
Now, we have talked a lot about intentional leadership from a self-reflection, a manage self, manage others, performance management context, and certainly then bringing that back to seeing the bigger picture, and obviously supported by mentoring. Kerry, from your perspective as a leadership expert and certainly developing these foundation skills, do you believe this 12-week process is the best way to get someone through their sort of learning about how they're going to adapt into their role?
Okay, so I'm involved in a lot of leadership programs and deliver a lot and help design and facilitate, and I have to say this is exceptionally best practice from what I saw. So going into the Foundations program and bringing those people that were from very disparate backgrounds and bringing them into the room and having that 3-month embedding, it worked. Yeah. It worked. And that cohort is, they will be in touch with each other for a long, long time because they actually called out to each other for help or support, and very much a very cohesive group when we left the room at the end of Module 6.
So some of, and that's terrific, Kerry, thank you for that feedback. That wasn't prompted, it was just a random question I thought I'd ask. But that's, so I know, so you've given at least 5 resources for people to go and look at across those different modules to become an intentional leader. And as we said at the outset, we will, in our follow-up email to you with a recording of this webinar, we will provide an email address if you would like a link to those 5 resources that Kerry mentioned that are part of the program that she felt certainly resonated at these different stages of the program. So if we just look at a quick recap, so it's 12 weeks, which allows for behavioural change. It includes the 3 diagnostic tools that build self-awareness. It includes the 6 modules, both face-to-face and e-learning. So as Kerry said, she gives them homework. And how much is the homework? The homework's a variety of content, articles, videos, things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Or some things that they might have to work on from a reflection point of view.
Practical and work-based, so with that action plan.
Yes.
2 one-on-one coaching sessions, which we obviously started this session talking about, paired with a mentor and the value of having a mentor in the workplace or externally. We encourage line manager involvement and keep them in the loop about the progress of their participant. As I said, we've run public programs right across the Eastern Seaboard. We've adapted programs in-house for organisations who have got a cohort ready to go, so we can adapt this program, reduce it or increase it depending on what they require for a bespoke approach to the program. So that's where we are with the foundations. Now, I did want to offer a special, and I know my corporate sales managers are offering this price up until the end of the month, which is December, which we're almost at Christmas. So now, unfortunately, I've got to tell you, the February cohort is almost booked out.
Wow.
So we don't have too many places left. So it's first in, best dressed there. So we're offering $500 off the 2019 programs. So the member price, and remember you get membership, so either a corporate membership or a professional membership, is $2,995 as opposed to normally $3,495 for 2019 cohorts. The non-member price is $5,495, and that's reduced from almost $6,000. So there's $500 off now. Membership, and people often say, why do you advertise the non-member price? Because membership's $350. It is, but obviously we encourage you to become a member and then please come onto the program. So register your interest there at managersandleaders.com.au/foundations-intentional-leadership. That's a long address. Or easier, email, and this is what I mean for the resources that Kerry has offered up today. Email programs@managersandleaders.com.au and just ask, can we please email the resources from the webinar? So programs@managersandleaders.com.au is the easiest way to get in touch, and Jo will be there waiting, and she'll respond with those resources. But as I said, if you are looking at the February cohort, it is almost booked out, so very limited places. The next cohort after February we're looking at doing is June. But certainly if you commit to to either February or June now. As I said, you receive that discounted member price. Now, let's get on to some questions, because I know it's been running hot, and we've got about 5 minutes for questions. So let's go. Okay, about how many hours would there be in between each module or face-to-face session?
Okay.
Of work. I assume that's the homework.
Yeah, around the homework. I would say probably about 2 hours, including self-reflection. So 2.5 hours tops.
So 12 weeks, every fortnight they meet face-to-face, and in between there's about 2 hours.
Yes,
there's an hour of self-reflection a lot, and then
an hour of the homework. The homework is really easy to get through. It's very readable, very interesting.
Yeah, we've tried to make it as practical as possible. Did you see a change from week 1 to week 13 in the participants, and what was that change? What was that core change?
I saw a lot of confidence growing in regards to being a manager, and seeing that they had tools and they had support from each other, and also, I saw a big change in regards to that, and they were a very cohesive group.
Quick one, coaching is often done without the coach actually being there. What's the importance, or what do you see as important in terms of having the coach firsthand?
You mean face-to-face?
Yeah, face-to-face, first-hand info on the person who's being coached.
Okay, so from the point of view of coaching, I think that provided, it doesn't really matter where you're located, if that's what we're asking about, provided that you have content behind going into that coaching session, so some assessments or a little bio in the person, and it's having that 1 hour coaching session and having that information going into it is important. How
involved were the managers in this journey? So I assume that's the line managers.
The line managers were very much involved. I know that from your end, you kept a lot of contact with the managers. We gave them a report after each module as a general,
and the feedback generally, didn't we?
Yeah, and the feedback as to how people were seeing the modules and how they were enjoying them, or if there were some things that we needed to improve. So the managers were, and they were an integral part of this. And we talked about, at the end there, we were talking about the fact that there was practical work applications, and it was encouraged all the way through to take this back to your workplace and use it on something that was live and real happening in your workplace.
Yeah, terrific, Kerry. Okay, let's keep going. We've got a couple more minutes. What is the cost of the program? We've covered that. That's $2,995 if you book before the end of this month. Can you do the program online in a rural and regional area? I can probably talk to that. You can't. The whole design of it is around 6 face-to-face, and there's obviously access to the LMS, which is where the homework is on the online learning management system with all those resources. But we do insist on the face-to-face. But what we do have, where we can build a cohort big enough. Now we need a minimum of about 8 to pay the facilitator and pay the resources and to get things up. So we're prepared to do that. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We're not in it to, we're in it to develop managers and leaders, as I said at the outset. So we want to run it wherever we can. I can tell you we've got 4 people locked in Cairns, so we need another 4 in Cairns. We've got 3 in Townsville, so we need another 5 in Townsville. This is to get for February, but we can really run it whenever, as long as we get those 8 people. And I know we've got 6 in Toowoomba, so we only need a couple more people in Toowoomba to run it in Toowoomba. Now that's regional Queensland. New South Wales, I know we've been talking to companies in Wollongong and Newcastle about whether they do an in-house one or they go into a public program with other local employers. But where we can build a cohort size that's 8 or more in a regional area, we will run this program. So that's and that's what that's our ambition, is to run it in as many places. We're passionate about it. We think it's a terrific experience for anyone moving into a management role or is in the management role and feeling overwhelmed. And certainly, as we said, that feeling like they're that accidental manager. They're technically very good at what they do, but they're feeling like, geez, how do I have that difficult conversation, or how do I plan my day better, or why am I not getting through this work? Why am I not getting the results from my team? So we want to run it in as many places as possible. Okay, how much focus is on emotional intelligence during the program?
Okay, so quite a lot, because they go into, with the Genos, they go into that particular assessment that looks at emotional intelligence. And we spend quite a lot in the first couple of modules talking about that and referring back to it.
Can I do the course now if I'm not in a management role, but want to be? Or do I need to wait until I've secured to be in a manager role?
It's better just in time. It's better just as you've moved into a role or about to move into a role. But certainly we've had, in our last cohort, there was somebody that wasn't yet.
Yeah, okay. But it's better to be.
It's better.
To have, yeah. Does it translate into further study in management or business at a university level? No, simple answer to that is no. It's a non-accredited program, and as I said, we come from the standpoint of offering really practical solutions that, as you know, facilitator-led, practitioner-led content. It's not aligned to a university program at all, non-accredited, and certainly run from the institute, from our professional body, as being a foundations program for management and leadership. Where are the face-to-face sessions held? Well, it depends on the location, but generally in IML offices or in places very close to IML offices in the places that we've run. We've got offices right around Australia, but as I said, if it's going to be in Toowoomba, Cairns, Wollongong, Newcastle, where we don't have offices, we'll certainly have a very central place to host those.
Hamilton Island sounds good.
Hamilton, you want to do the Hamilton Island group?
I know we've got a great Brisbane facilitator, but
you're always open.
We can co-facilitate in Hamilton Island.
Yes, I might make a trip up there too, Kerry, just to supervise. Okay, what else have we got here? Okay, so we've done how many hours? Emotional intelligence. And the 3 diagnostic tools.
Mm-hmm.
So can you please repeat what the diagnostic tools were and the impact that they have on the program?
So one was the IML. So it was the 360, which is that Sam went through at the beginning of the presentation, which has got the 3 components. The other is Genos, which looks at emotional intelligence, and also it is actually a tool where you get feedback from your managers and peers, etc. And then the third one is DISC, which is a profiling tool on more or less your communication style and how you like to interact.
Yeah, and then we feed that back into where that communication module in particular, don't we? Presentations.
Yes, we use it a couple of times, DISC, through the program to reinforce the fact that not everyone is the same.
Yeah. And I should touch on that the IML 360, which is our IP here that we make available for corporate members in particular, to get them to understand their staff. And it measures across all those competencies I showed you, the manage self, manage others, and manage the business, which is the 34 key competencies that this business is built and underpinned on. We can measure against all those competencies and what their peers also think. So what comes out of that generally is 2 to 3 things that someone can work on that's been identified to them, and then they can work on as a manager or a leader, or indeed as a staff member wanting to grow into that management role. So that IML 360 is widely used across our whole member network. So obviously we want to make it core for our business. Okay, so just touching on that special, so $500 off, as I said, with the member price. So please get in touch with programs@managersandleaders.com.au. We've also given you a number there if you do want to call directly, 1300 661 061. And so please get in touch with us. As I said, February cohort places very limited, but still available. But certainly first in best dress there. But June is available now, so you can take advantage of that. I thought I would share from 2 people that one went through, I believe, the Sydney cohort.
Yes, Penny was the Sydney one.
Penny went through a Sydney cohort, and Una went through the Melbourne cohort, I believe. Just some of their feedback to the questions. I thought I would leave that with you, just as an insight in terms of some testimonials for the program, but overarching it all, and probably coming back to the central theme of this webinar, is this notion of intentional leadership and taking an accidental manager to an intentional leader. And the whole goal, the whole vision of IML is for better societies, better organisations, better people. And we strongly believe that by doing this foundations program, takes someone on that journey, so they're no longer that accidental manager, but they're an intentional manager, an intentional leader. And I think some of the resources, Kerry, that you've mentioned today will be absolutely vital. So once again, please get in touch with us at programs@managersandleaders.com.au to certainly get the links to those resources in terms of how to be an intentional leader. Kerry, any final thoughts from you?
Two things. Two things that I've learned as a leadership specialist is that to be an effective leader and manager, you have to have people trust. You have to engender trust, vulnerable trust with people. And the second is you have to value employees. I think if you've got those two components as behaviours and actions by yourself, then you're well on the way to being an effective leader.
Terrific, Kerry. Listen, thank you so much for coming by and talking to. As I said, we had over 1,000 people register for the webinar, so there's a huge interest out there around this Foundations program and certainly this notion of intentional leadership. And in no small way is it certainly you've made a huge contribution to the program and to supporting it. So thank you for stopping by and sharing your insight.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you for joining today's webinar on intentional leadership. As I said, please get in touch with us if you'd like the resources or if you'd like to inquire about entering the program in 2019. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much.